In a recent issue of Louisiana State University's literary magazine, The Southern Review, the poet Nick Lance writes that so much of civilization depends on not knowing what other people are thinking. The ability to be civil with others during day-to-day interactions often relies on us keeping our thoughts to ourselves. People who refuse to wear face masks in public during the pandemic, for example, elicit in me thoughts that should probably not be verbalized. However, the opposite of Lance's statement is also true. So much of civilization depends on knowing what other people are thinking. People like the poet Kirk Lua. What this poet has to say is absolutely vital if we are to understand what's gone off course in this country and ultimately how to heal and move forward. In a moment, Kirk is going to read his poems. Permit me to read an excerpt from the abstract to his thesis. This is from Kirk's abstract. My collection of poems is the different ways I have chosen to communicate with strangers, with friends, with family, with my cat, with myself, with the living and the dead. Communication as in work, communication as in prayer, silent reflection. I am a Mexican-American poet who has written with these themes of family, labor, lust, and grief that manifest themselves in my own signature voice of witness and self-inquiry. However, these experiences are not only mine and are not solely a Mexican-American experience, but a human one. None of us are so naive to believe that people who think climate change is not real, for example, are suddenly going to go out and start reading poetry. But that does not matter. As long as there are poets like Kirk Lua who continue to witness and to write, there is hope for a return to civility, to mutual understanding, and ultimately to respect. Please join me in welcoming the poet Kirk Lua.
Thank you, Tim, for that really wonderful introduction. And I miss you very much. Hopefully we can get together soon. I just want to start off with my acknowledgements. Thank you, Tim, for being my teacher, my mentor, my chair, and my friend, for sharing your new work with me, for giving me books, and for talking about the ear over the I and the line over the sentence. All these elements were important in the final process of my thesis. Thank you, Bryn, for being on my thesis committee and for your work, which has always been influential to me, your writing, your teaching, and your community work. Thank you, Ronald, for being on my committee and for being there every Monday, every step of the way my last semester, and for being a punk hero. Thank you, Connie, for being my first teacher of poetry in the MFA program at Fresno State and for being my last as I graduated. And I want to thank you, Barbara, for being my first academic teacher of poetry, my first mentor, and for treating me like family, for taking on the responsibility and telling me when I was on the right track and wrong in poetry and in my life and poetry lessons from your kitchen table. Also to all my humble homies who first heard me and supported me. I would also like to thank Sai for being a true friend in the MFA program. You are my poetry big brother for your support and understanding when you patiently listen to me after workshops. Being a fan of professional wrestling, there's an old saying, consider yourself lucky if you make it out with one true friend. And I consider myself extremely lucky for not only having such a friendship with Sai, but having such a friendship and relationship with Jessica Ruth Turney. Jessica, you made workshops better, my poetry better, and my life better. Thank you for loving me with patience and for believing in me when I didn't trust myself that I could continue on. I love you, my mentor and my partner in crime and in my life. And my biggest thank you to all my family, especially my parents, Alvaro and Yolanda Lua, who are my first teachers of poetry. Mom, you taught me how to write, and Dad, you taught me how to say fuck it. And thank you to Craig, my big sister Lisa, and my niece Bella. Lisa, no one has had my back since day one, like my sister, and no one has loved me at my grumpiest, like my niece. And to my cats, Zucchini and Minerva, who won't appreciate this, thank you. I will give you some extra treats later. Thanks, Jefferson, for everything, for from when I first arrived to the program as a GA till now. And thank you to all my past MFA classmates. I hope you're all well. And a big thank you to Javi, who was there since the beginning. We started together and we'll end together. Okay. So starting off with some Catholic poems. This one is titled, The Blood of Christ. I tell my mother I'm going to the bathroom, but I have to get out, breathe, and rest my knees. A white pickup pulls up outside St. Joachim's. A woman gets out of the truck and yells, "Free wine!" And all the winos come out of the sidewalk cracks looking for salvation. She hands the bottles from the bed and I walk and reach for mine. A wino says, "Hey, you're not one of us. You're just a kid." I walk back into mass, genuflecting my way back to the pew. The Golden Coffin, after Gary Soto. Grown-ups didn't know more than me about the dead. Gary Soto. I remember being shocked going to Mexico and seeing the funeral parlors right off the street. I was walking by with a friend of mine who made a joke about you can go in and buy a coffin and they ask if they shall wrap it or if you'll wear it out. Barbara Brinson Curiel. After church and all the guilt, after all the talk of body and blood, after the drive down to Fresno to Costco, after all the free samples, and after standing in front of the bakery, smelling all those magical smells and getting lost and lost again, my parents found me and they stood in that long line as I cut ahead past the Polish dogs, past the in-house eye doctor and membership area to the men who sold air conditioners and tiles and coffins. I stood in front of the coffin that jetted out from the wall. It was only half a coffin and it was gold. The man whose job it was to sell these didn't need a clever tongue. His customers would have to come along at some point. He looked at me as if he were thinking of what he could say to make me feel better about this coffin and about him and about the dead and about heaven, but he didn't try. He knew as much as I did when it came to the living. This next poem is titled Photo Taken on My 29th Birthday. I just turned 30 in this past September, so this was last year. Photo taken on my 29th birthday. We turn into the middle of the bed and meet. We kiss hungover off the 151 proof rum from last night. She remembers, then reaches for her cell phone for beneath her pillow and presents me a picture she took yesterday. I am in a tub of warm water. I fit all of me in there. I am smiling, laughing. My boxer briefs lay next to the tub and the teal tiles that surround me make my brown skin glow. The yellow loofah hangs above my head, but won't bring about any frankincense, myrrh, or gold. Only her love, as I look like I did 29 years ago, a hairy, fat, newborn baby. And a lot of people in the program know that I have a cat and her name is Zucchini, and this poem is for her. It is titled Whiskers for Zucchini. She tells me when they fall off her cat, she saves them like a parent saves their child's baby teeth. I ask her why. They are good luck, she says. I did not know this, but I knew this, for I eat my cat's whiskers when they fall off, and I knew there had to be a reason. This next one is titled Party. You scale to the top of the counter in the apartment, but I do not squish you under my thumb with a dirty fingernail. Neither of us owns this place. These boundaries do not matter to me. Neither does our differences. I invite you to stay because of the rain and of the night that keeps us in. You search for accidental crumbs, but she keeps this place too clean. You will starve. We break bread from a banana. You quickly sense it and seek it out, not noticing our newly found friendship, only the fruit. The next morning, I can't find you or the banana. She tells me there were ants crawling everywhere. I complain, the first time I have some friends over. Heron. Every poet wants to be a heron. They want to fly through a ring of cigarette smoke toward their immortality, but they'll never arrive. Every poet wants to be a hero. They want their words to ring honest, but they don't. Why don't they? Why do they only tell us of their heroics and not their villainy? Every poet wants to be a prophet. They want their admission of imperfection to say, for admitting I am imperfect, I am holy. And still, every poet wants to be a heron, or at least seen as one through dull sadness. They want to stand in a small pool of cool water and be beautiful and admired for no reason. Every poet writes about the heron, but some poets don't want to be a heron and write about how the frog, the fish, the small prey are killed and eaten by the heron. And that's when the heron and the poet aren't so bad. As I mentioned earlier in my acknowledgements, my niece, she loves me at my grumpiest, so these two next poems are for her. These are for you, Bella. For Isabella. I was supposed to be watching her as she splashed her tiny brown hands in and out of a fountain that collected pennies passed off as wishes. I picked her body from the lip of the basin. Her hand was floating on the surface like a dead goldfish. I ran in circles howling, "She's dead, she's dead." People stayed looking at one another, but would not look at her. So I performed a miracle and tickled her belly and blew kisses as sweet as raspberries to bring her back to laughter. I describe an angel to my niece. As we decorate our abuelita's home for Christmas, when she asks, "What is it?" she points to an abstract angel statue that I hold in my hand. An angel, don't you see it? What's the circle? That is a ring of light, a halo. And those are wings to fly. And that? Hands in prayer. And this? I laugh as I say, the head of the angel, Bella. She closes her eyes, the space between her brows pinched by thought. As she puts all these pieces together the best she can, she opens her eyes and confesses, angels are ugly. This next one is a tough one, but it's for my mom. This one's for you, Mom. I love you. Cafe conversation. Don't you just sometimes want to veer your car into the next lane? Into oncoming traffic, he says. Yes, I think of that all the time, she says. He says, me too. And I think, who will they meet in the next lane in the opposite direction? I think of my mother collapsed, weeping onto the kitchen floor, confessing to me that she often fantasized of driving her car off an overpass and into a ditch. A plan that, as her son, left me in sad admiration. I picked her up, leaned in, gave her a kiss on her wet cheek, and that kiss felt as if written in cursive, and the two S's, a sail and a boat, that I hoped would soften her mental wreck. This one's for my abuelita, and this one is also for Garcia Lorca, no hard feelings, Garcia Lorca. Maria Dolores versus Garcia Lorca. I push my abuelita in a wheelchair down the aisle in La Segunda. I'm not brave enough to call it her wheelchair. I find a notebook for $1, flip through it, hope for vacancy. A couple of pages written on by a woman. Her pencil left teeth marks on the page. Catholic prayers, and she confesses being choked by her boyfriend in front of her kids. I rip them out, put them in my pocket, and put it back on the shelf. My abuelita looks in a photo album full of another woman's life. She looks at them as if she were in them. She looks at me, finds me guilty for something I'd never do. She closes the album and says she is ready without words. She is tired. We exit and her eyes look up, her head down. She points to el cielo and says, "La luna parece una tortilla de harina." She points again to a field of grapevines as I buckle her in. "Parece una sábana blanca extendida a través de mi cama en la luz de la luna." My abuelita is better than Garcia Lorca and doesn't even know it or who he was. Pomegranate. 1. My hair is matted. I haven't washed it for the past week. I run a warm bath and slide into the tub. 2. Do you know the trick in taking the seeds out of a pomegranate without making a mess? My mother asks me at her mother's wake. I say no. 3. There isn't much room in the tub, but I raise my arms above my head and begin to work my hands into my hair and split the mats underwater. I do the best I can. 4. You push in the rubber stopper, fill the kitchen sink, and split the fruit open underwater. I nod as my mother tells me this. Her sadness sounds of running water. She stares at my abuelita's pomegranate tree in the garden. Her eyes cry and burn from her unbroken stare. 5. I tear out the knots and fling them toward the top corner of the tub. They crawl up the wall like spiders. This one's from my dad. Hablame, which also is the title of my thesis. Hablame. 1. My tia holds her hands out, makes a rectangle with her thumbs and index fingers. Así. This was the size of our TV in Mexico. It was in la cocina and it was in black and white. Y tu pa, when he was little, would never miss un juego de fútbol. I reach through her fingers, grasp at the memory. 2. Pa, háblame. Okay. Tia told me a story about you when you were little. ¿Qué dijo? I offer the memory, his face in the window of my fingers. She said you watch soccer on a black and white TV this size in your abuela's kitchen. He isn't one to reminisce, but he remembers and smiles. The window breaks down between us. Pa talks to me and says, "Sí, mijo," as he lets the memory bring out his love for the game. This one's for my Uncle Jesse. Awake. Uncle, an island. Uncle, an anticlimactic New Year's. Dying uncle, head on warm asphalt where the down and out walk. Dying uncle, drugs bubble his brain. Dying uncle, dying animal. Dead uncle, a miscarriage at 29. Dead uncle, a broken down car on a sunny day. Dead uncle, stalks me like a panther. My dead uncle, lying in a coffin like a bowl of oranges. Huh? Here's water. Just to take a breather, because I feel like I've been just going through these poems. I really thank you for everybody who came to hear me and Javi read and support the program. And I hope, we all continue to support each other through this time. I really appreciate it. It's really nice just seeing everybody, even through these little squares. This one's from my grandpa, titled Grandpa. 1. The hearse backs up toward the mouth of the church. 7 of us stand to one side, our wrists already ache. My tío Chavo jokes with me. The driver walks in our direction with 7 carnations that hit the pavement before pinned to our chests. The driver falls to her hands and knees, slides inches, her hands ahead of her and her brown stockings. Her flats fly to her sides. With an empire hand gesture, my tío Chavo shouts, "Safe." 2. I do not recognize the body that lies in that coffin, only pieces left behind. His face fogged white, winter mornings in the Central Valley. His curly peppered hair kicked up dust disturbed by cockfights. His rested eyes setting suns swallowed by fields of grapevines, labor that became wine or dried fruit. His silence heavy as the summertime heat. His mustache no longer unveils his gold teeth like the new day. His hands strick hard pan. He smells of wet earth. 3. My dad hands me his keys after the post-funeral reception. He phones his boss, his accented English palls his drunken Spanish. Hey boss, I buried my father today. I'll go to work tomorrow if you want, but the boss finishes my dad's thought with understanding. He asks me to make a fast food run, but gets pumped because he remembers we have tamales at home. He then tells me to get ready once we get home. We are going clubbing, and he does a little dance. He laughs and I laugh. He falls asleep and I dream of warming up my dad tamales as my tears cool against the air conditioner's air. And, this is one of the very first poems I wrote when I did my undergrad at Humboldt. It's a very short one, but it's always been one of my favorite ones. Titled Old Friend. Empty potholes resemble craters on the moon. When we were young, the moon was made of cheese, and puddles and potholes were the swimming pools we never had. This is actually gonna be my last poem. Okay. I actually burned through these pretty quick, but that's okay. I think I was a little nervous, but I guess that gives me a little extra time to talk. This last poem happened right here. I live in Tower District, and before COVID and the pandemic, we would, me and Jessica would tour the bars every once in a while and have a good time. And this poem is about a particularly good time we had at Tower Sports Bar. And it also just reminds me of just how fun a bar can be when there's strangers around and there's no drunk fights or couples arguing. It was just a really good time. And I that's what I miss about what's happening right now, just being together. Of course, it's important to take care of ourselves distance, but that's what I miss. So this poem, I'm really happy to read this poem, and I had written it because it's just a nice looking back. And also this one is for Jessica, because yes, I do love you. We have become more than regulars here. What do you all have? Our bartender asks us. I say a draft Guinness, and she says a draft IPA. So a Guinness and not a whiskey, our bartender jokes. She remembers my usual, she whispers proudly in my ear, but with a hint of embarrassment. The bar top is covered with a thin layer of dust from the gusts of wind that pushed themselves through the bar doors. Gusts of wind that almost swallowed a mother and her baby. Gusts of wind that blew debris into the bar owner's convertible car. Gusts of wind that dropped a druggie to the pavement whose forehead bled. Gusts of wind that blew the sun out and left night. I write her name in this dust, but she doesn't notice and places her glass on top of it. And I laugh, and she asks, "What's up?" And I say, "I love you." A patron comes from outside smoking a cigarette, and he says, "The space station is passing over us right now. It looks like an orange star." We look at each other and head out with the others. We look up as we exit the doors. The same patron who brought this to our attention stands next to me, then is embraced from the back by his male friend. And this feels like a victory for humankind. He says, "It travels at 18,000 miles per hour." We all take our time to think about this fact. Then he yells, "Save us, save us, we're all dying down here." We all laugh and return to our stools. We ask for our tab, and our bartender asks, "What would you like to pay?" And after we think about it, both of us having had 3 beers each, the 3 of us decide $20 is fair. She says, "I'll get it this time, and you'll get it the next." Our bartender takes the 20, then takes a shot of whiskey on the house with her and says, "Because we are badass bitches." And our bartender invites me to partake in a second round, but she answers for me and says, "He's a lightweight," and I am. They down the second shots, and we give her a $5 tip. As we stand to leave, our bartender asks us, "Any plans tonight?" with a wink. We giggle, "No." "What? Why?" she says. "It doesn't take that long." And in the parking lot, before I can give her many kisses goodnight, she leans against her car and asks me with a grin, "You love me?" Thank you. Thank you for, watching, hearing me read. Thank you.